Good evening, everybody. It's the pollinator. And in the spirit of a country that has made it extremely obvious that it don't like black people. And I don't mean, listen, I don't mean all white people. I mean, we have to live in a climate in this country, in the United States, that isn't one person we're dealing with. We have to deal with a climate that is increasingly hostile to our existence in this country, no matter whether we fought for this country, whether we served for this country, whether we work for them, whether we don't vote for them, whether we vote for them, whether we have a lot of money, whether we don't have a lot of money, whether we're somewhere in between. It is just so obvious as you look around all of the things going on in this country that it's still as racist as it has ever been. And the mood of this country has been taken back to the days of Jim Crow, before the civil rights movements of the 1960s, and not only that, being LGBT, that is also under attack in this country. And guess what day this is? This is Christmas. It's not going to be uploaded before the end of this day, but I have made a conscious decision not to celebrate these holidays anymore. That I have been watching particular people that have explained what's behind every one of the holidays that is celebrated in the United States. And I've looked and researched some of that history myself. And why is it that all of these holidays are either predicated on a lie, or they're celebrating something that got brought about before we had civil rights, or during all of the movements where we've had civil rights campaigns, civil rights laws, all sorts of things we have to battle 24 hours a day. And if we don't battle them, we're still under the influence of every single lack of reparations that have been given to black people for how we were treated during slavery and in this modern day slavery system. For anybody who thinks racism is dead, is in severe denial and suffering from cognitive dissonance, and that the evidence is there, they just don't want to look at it. They don't want to acknowledge it. For if most of America, if all of America actually acknowledged the position we have been placed in this country as black people, they would probably have to live with the feelings of guilt the rest of their life. Because, see, it's easy to abuse a people, mistreat a people, and then pretend like you're the victim instead of the perpetrators of a disgusting amount of white supremacy, white nationalism, things of that nature. And every single holiday in this country is devoid of our struggle. So I'm not going to contribute to that anymore, even though the holidays are beloved for me in my history. They have been beloved. And so it's really strange to be one of, I don't know how few people who are taking a stand on not contributing to the politicization, the economics, the economy, the just all of the disgusting amount of money that is spent during these holidays, not given to our communities, the black community, but given to every other kind of community, especially the white community in this nation. It's all propaganda and capitalism at its finest. If you look at the history of the kind of money that is being made during these holidays and where it's going, you will know that it's one more level of us being consumers in the United States and not having much ownership in anything. I mean, the Asians, the Native Americans, and the Hispanics have been given somewhat of reparations in this country, yet they have suffered the least amount of time throughout the history of the U.S. And I'm going to go so far as to say, you know what? The Jews complain about the Holocaust, but what they don't realize is the Holocaust has been going on for us in this country for over 400 years. And they are participating in that Holocaust towards us. Yes, sirree, Bob, people, Jewish people have owned slaves. They are participating hand in hand with the global domination, well, we'll say national domination of every industry in this country, from Hollywood to professional sports to the legal, to legal attorneys, businesses, to the healthcare industry. They own just about every aspect of capitalism in the United States. And then white people own the power and the control, and they're hand in hand. But you notice every time anything happens to them, there's a shitload of legal people and other kinds of people that go to bat for them, while still nobody is going to bat for us but us. And so that's why I'm taking this stand. It's also why I left the Facebook platform for a week. Well, actually it was 6 days. And I knew that they would manage to kind of squash that protest because, you know, my friends told me that I looked like I was online the entire time I was offline. So, you know, these kind of shenanigans and games that is being played in the United States is something that's being played every single day of our lives. If we're not reading about that, we're reading about murders, we're reading about white women and white men losing their motherfucking mind and calling the police on us, using them as their professional, as their legal team to attack us for no reason. They should be getting fined for lying and for wasting taxpayers' dollars and wasting the KK cops' time. But see, again, from our perspective and looking at it on this side of it, the police are in on it too. You know, they love to answer those calls when there could be a heck of a lot more pressing crimes going on out there, when they're bowing to the discrimination and the racism of white people calling the police on us for doing everything. The year 2018 has just been the most disgusting display of racism that I have seen since the 1960s. I watched the entire movement from the television because I wasn't allowed to go out there and protest. I was too young, but I watched my mother protest, and she talked to me about the way she felt about our leaders at the time. And so I was raised in a strong black woman environment where she was my shero at the time, because she was willing to get out there despite how it looked in the public, because we led a public life because of my father. She didn't care. She was going to stand up for our rights as a people, even if it cost my father a little, it cost his reputation a little bit. But what was interesting is it really didn't cost him his reputation, because she didn't do it enough to to make him look bad. But she got arrested. She participated in sit-ins. She participated in marches, and I saw it all. And one by one, as our leaders were getting murdered, my mom fell apart. She was literally sobbing and crying, and I remember watching all of that and looking at her, and I didn't understand what the big hubbub was about until later in life, until I grew up. But see, children observe things, and they don't necessarily have to understand them at the time in order for them to have an impact on their life. And boy, did it have an impact on mine. The first time I became aware of how much I was being discriminated against was in the military. And yeah, some things happened while I was serving, and then I got out of the service. I ended up in Silicon Valley, with training in the computer industry, and I began my career. And that was an uphill battle all the way. I had to be 10 times as good. I had to be 10 times as smart. I had to be 10 times as everything than my white counterparts, and even my counterparts that they constantly flew in from India, from the land of India. I worked with a lot of them, and they were getting jobs and positions up far, far, far beyond black people in Silicon Valley. Also, the number of black people was close to nil in that industry, and it is still that way. Anybody who thinks that technology-based companies is not discriminating would also be suffering from cognitive dissonance, because the evidence and the statistics are there. We are underrepresented in technology, which is why they're just bowling us over and doing any old kind of thing, any old kind of way they want to. And again, we are at the back of the bus, underneath the pile, when it comes to big business and monopolies in the United States. I also grew up during a time when companies weren't allowed to be monopolies. The FTC and the FCC used to break those companies up to avoid the kind of global, national, and global domination that is occurring at this time. But if you notice, those agencies are now in bed with big businesses and looking the other way, while they become bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's dangerous. We live in dangerous times right now. We live in a time when we've got a little dictator trying to run the country like it's his own personal apprentice show. That man don't know shitola from shinola about politics. He is so very obvious that he does not know what he's doing, that he's got some kind of mental illness going on. Yet, Republicans, Democrats alike are looking the other way. They're either looking the other way, they're either agreeing with the way that man is trying to not run things, or they're trying to distance themselves from what he is doing. But distancing yourself isn't doing anything to solve the mess he is creating in politics and in the mood of the country. It seems like people things happen and people take it on as if it's acceptable just because it's coming out of Washington, D.C. And that is how they're enacting and taking this country back to prior to the civil rights movement, is just through attitudes. I research a lot, and I see that locally people are denying rights, human rights and civil rights, based on their religion, based on their bigotry, based on anything they feel like basing it on, because guess what? They're either in control of the country, or they're vying for control of certain groups of people. So they have to put a lid on marginalized people in the United States, and are doing so successfully because the government and big business is in on that sham. They want to keep people broke. They want to keep people working too many hours on their job so that they don't have time to become politically mature. There is a whole lot of people in this country who think that not being involved in politics or not really caring about politics means they're not political, without realizing that their entire lives are structured around the politics of this country, as witnessed by voter suppression tactics, witnessed by gerrymandering, which is redistricting zones in any particular city of the United States where we dominate in the numbers. They just break the districting up and thus reduce the impact and power of our vote. And then there's voter fraud going on as well, because that is virtually the only way right now where we have any power or control, and yet they strip us of that too, so that our vote doesn't matter as much as other kinds of people's vote do in this country. They are scared to death. They know that if we get any power at all, we'll run all them motherfuckers out of Washington. So they mess with the vote. So, like I said, in the spirit of all of this, I have decided not to contribute to the sham of holidays, from 4th of July to Thanksgiving to Christmas to Easter to... One of the reasons is I'm not a Christian, so I'm not celebrating Christian holidays. And the other reason is a lot of these holidays are predicated upon lies and upon horrible things that they've done to our people. Even St. Patrick's Day, which isn't a national holiday, even that day, people don't know that it's predicated upon wiping out the pygmies, which were African Moors in Ireland. And they've got a day where they get bloody drunk and everybody runs around all painted up in green without realizing what they're celebrating. I'm not celebrating that shit no more.